Light strikes are quite common with Mausers, and that is especially true with Mausers in 8mm or 7.92. And there are a few different reasons for that. One of them is just the wide disparity in ammo production. Some ammunition was produced in countries and stored in countries that had a lot of money, or just the infrastructure for ammunition production and storage, making this ammunition very high quality. Other ammunition was produced in countries during war times, or in countries that were from the developing world, or just is very dated. So because of that, this ammo has a lot of problems. However, another big problem is with the striker in Mauser rifles. So if your Mauser rifle is experiencing more issues than is reasonable with certain ammo types, this video is going to be about troubleshooting the issues with a Mauser striker. Now, I'm going to use the term striker, firing pin, and striker spring and firing pin spring interchangeably. Both options are factually correct with the way this rifle works. One quick disclaimer before I get started. Anything you choose to do with this information is your choice and not mine. So if you hurt your firearm or yourself, it's not my fault, it is yours. I've organized this from things that are easiest to check and to fix, to things that are harder to check and fix and that you may need to buy components for. So without further ado, your Mauser firing pin should be clean, straight, long, and strong. Those four things are the four things that we're going to focus on. And the first one is clean. When you look at your striker, it should only have the oil on it that you put on it. It shouldn't have cosmoline or factory grease or anything like that. Now, this is true with both the striker itself as well as the canal that the striker travels in. And the spring, just the whole bolt, should be clean and well lubricated. Sometimes getting deep down inside of the bolt body can be a bit of a challenge for cleaning. So some of the things that I recommend is using a long brass or polymer brush. Along with Q-tips, you can get in through the two little holes right here and clean all inside of there and get as much of that gunk out as you can. You can also use hot water and hot soapy water. You can pull the components apart and let them soak, or you can just pour those things on top of it. That will melt that, and then you can get in there and clean it a little bit easier. You should do that same thing to make sure that the spring, striker, and cocking piece are also all very clean. All of the components in the bolt need to be clean before you can go on to anything else. Second, your striker spring needs to be straight. And what I mean by that is if your firing pin is bent in any direction, that's going to cause extra friction as it is traveling through the firing pin hole in the front. So there are a few different ways that you can check that. The first is with your bolt all the way disassembled, you should be able to put your firing pin through the hole part way, as deep as it would go normally. It actually will travel deeper than it's supposed to go, and then of course there's friction in other places, but that's not a problem. But if you put the firing pin into the firing pin hole just a little bit to where it would hit the primer, it should be able to fall out or at least be somewhat loose. It shouldn't stick hard. You can put your firing pin without anything attached to it into the bolt body. And you don't want to push it all the way in that it will get stuck, because it will if you go far enough, because it's not really meant to go that far forward. But you want to put it about where it would be if you were hitting a round, if you were hitting the primer of a round. Generally speaking, mine, you can push it in and out, and it floats easily. When my 24-47 firing pin was bent, I would push it in and then it would get stuck, and I had to push pretty hard to actually get it back out. But you'll notice with mine that if it does get stuck because I push it too far in, I just put a little bit of pressure and it comes out. And that is because this is fairly straight. The other way is to put the back of the striker in a drill chuck and spin it at a low speed. When you spin that at a low speed, if you see it doing like this, then that means that it is not straight. However, if you see it staying in the center when it spins, that means that it is straight. To bend the tip of the firing pin if it is off base, what I use is an adjustable wrench or spanner like this, and I will grab the firing pin tip and bend it very, very, very gently in the direction it needs to go. This is the type of thing where you can very, very easily overbend it or break it and cause yourself more problems than you would be fixing. If that is not something that you feel comfortable doing, you could also just buy yourself a new firing pin. Personally, I choose to try and modify things like that first, because if I do cause problems and end up breaking the firing pin tip off, well, worst case is then I have the part that was broken is just more broken, throw it away and buy a new one. The third thing is your firing pin needs to be long. And I actually made a video about that not too long ago, so I'm going to put a card in the corner. You can click on that if you want to watch that video. The basic rundown is this. Firing pin depth on a Mauser in 8mm is supposed to be between 0.055 inches and 0.056 inches. An easy way to measure that is to gently let your firing pin into the fired position as if you had just fired your Mauser 98. And then when you do that, you can see how far your firing pin actually protrudes. If it is not long enough, you can file the back of the cocking piece, and what that can do is push it forward just a little bit because the cocking piece interacts with the bolt shroud to actually stop the firing pin from going too far forward. This surface right here, the flat surface, hits right here, and that is what actually stops the firing pin from going any deeper. This edge right there, and you can tell that it is still a little bit uneven, but it is even enough for my work. However, you don't want to go too far, because if you go too far, you could have ruptured primers, which is one problem, or you could have the cocking piece interacting with the bolt shroud in a place that it is not supposed to. I talk about it more in the other video. You need to have calipers to be able to do this. If you don't have calipers, you will need to borrow them or something, because you really can't test this on your own. I would really like to make some firing pin protrusion gauges for 8mm, so if that's something that you would like to see a video on, let me know. Finally, your striker spring needs to be strong. If your striker spring isn't strong enough, then your firing pin isn't going to have enough energy to actually hit the primers hard enough to make it go off. Sometimes these older primers can be harder than they are for modern cartridges, or because they're old, they can just have gone bad a little bit, and you need a little bit more punch to actually get them. Recently, I did a video on a Wolf Striker spring kit, and this is the type of thing that you can buy if you don't want to experience light strikes. These springs are extra strong, and because they are so strong, it gives you much more energy to hit that primer. I chose this one last because, as far as I know, there's not really a way to test how strong your spring is. So if you've tried the other three things first and it's still not working, you can just buy one of these. They can usually run anywhere from like $12 to $15, and at that price, if it doesn't really solve your problem, you're also not out very much. I made this video because I wish this video would have existed when I was troubleshooting my Mauser, so I hope that this can be very helpful for you. If it is, share it wherever that seems appropriate. Also, just liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment really helps me out a lot. But I've troubleshot my Turkish M38 and I lived on.
Which proves it's hard to get the best of a man named John. John.